Following the release of the police video showing the arrest and fatal beating of 29-year-old Tyre Nichols, Memphis District Attorney Stephen Mulroy has issued a statement promising that his office will do everything it can to get justice for Tyre and his family.
Let's talk about what that looks like. With us now is former U.S. Attorney Michael Moore and former Los Angeles Police Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey. Thank you both for being with us this morning. Michael, first, I want to start with you. Because there are a lot of questions about what prompted the reaction that we saw from the officers in the video. It doesn't appear that they had cause to attack him the way they did after the stop. What did you think?
Well, I'm glad to be with all of you, and I'm sorry it's on a day like this. Let me say, I think that we can talk about training and that type of thing and upticks in crime. That has nothing to do with what I saw on the tape. And that was just sort of not a lack of training, but a lack of conscience on these officers. So I want to separate that out a little bit. I do think that we have a situation where we have a lot of good people at law enforcement and we have some folks who are not good. And we saw that on the tape. One thing that I may want to consider and I would urge people to think about is the use of these task forces and what it means and how are they monitored and how are they supervised on a day-to-day basis. Are people in them for too long? So that they start to lose their sense of community policing and of the job that they were hired to do. And that is to protect and to serve a particular community, not to act like an elite military team in the area. So that to me is one place we can start. I hope we'll have discussions going forward about outrage, from community leaders, not just when we see an excessive use of force, but also when we see a spike in crime. At the same time, I want to see the people who are concerned about a spike in crime upset when we have an excessive use of force, and those discussions need to happen. And I think that's how we have real discussions about moving forward and making progress. I don't think we can equate, though, the brutality on that tape with all police departments. That's something that those officers, let the criminal justice system take its course in that case.
There have been calls for the police union, the Memphis Police Association, to take a stronger stand, to issue a statement regarding these indictments and of course, the firings of these officers. And Cheryl, to you, we just got a statement from the Memphis Police Association. I do want to read it in full before I get your response. It says, the Memphis Police Association would again like to extend condolences to the family of Mr. Tyre Nichols. The Memphis Police Association is committed to the administration of justice and never condones the mistreatment of any citizen nor any abuse of power. That faith is what we will lean on in the coming days, weeks, and months to ensure the totality of circumstances is revealed. Mr. Nichols' family, the city of Memphis, and the rest of the country deserve nothing less. We pray for justice, healing, and eventual closure for all involved. No singling out of the officers, no mention of them, the indictments, the firings. Is this a strong enough statement, Cheryl?
Understand that these unions are there to protect the officers, and so they are, in some instances, a lobbying arm of these police departments in terms of rights of officers, and so they gave a very politically correct and wanting to seem sensitive statement. But understand this, that police department and that city has a real problem. Now that we've had over 24 hours almost, coming up on 24 hours since that video has been released, I have so many questions about what that department did really to prevent this. All of this was preventable. You have officers who are young on the job, unsupervised out there, doing what they do on a regular basis. This was not anything that they aren't accustomed to doing. And we know that they were very sophisticated and savvy in that they created an audio record to try to manufacture probable cause for the initial stop and everything that happened after.
Mm-hmm.
And Cheryl, I want to stay with you because I find the dynamic, especially as you noted, when they're discussing the incident after it happened, I find that very interesting. And notably, the police chief here in Memphis said that race is less of an issue in this incident than bias is, but another factor might be groupthink. In your experience working in police departments, is groupthink a major issue within the force when someone witnesses someone else escalating and then they escalate? Do you get the sense that that contributed to what we saw?
It's absolutely a contributing factor, and I don't take race out of the issue, by the way. I refer to it as a wolf pack mentality. We see this all the time at the end of a foot pursuit where officers are putting in work because that's what they do. They punish you when they catch you at the end of a foot pursuit. And so we see officers who are coming on the scene after the fact and they want to get in a punch, get in a kick. Somebody comes up late and pulls out an axe and starts beating Mr. Nichols with that. And so it's absolutely groupthink, not unique to the Scorpion unit, bothered by the name Scorpion, but not unique to the unit. That's police culture. That's what they do. It's important, particularly in a small unit like that where camaraderie is a big thing and officers want to know, can I trust you? Are you going to back me? And so these officers have demonstrated time and time again, and on that event, on that incident, that you can trust me. I'm going to buy into and corroborate the lie that we're all going to get together and tell about what happened here tonight.
And Michael, to you, I'm just curious to know your thoughts on the charges that the officers are facing, particularly the second-degree murder charge. Is it aggressive? And from a legal standpoint, and I ask you the aggressive question because I'm wondering from a legal standpoint how that could play out in terms of getting a conviction.
Well, I think the charges were right, and they came at the right time. It didn't take much review of the tape to see what had happened, and I appreciated very much my colleagues' comments about how they manufactured a story on video camera. I mean, a first-year prosecutor could see that and hear it. So I don't think it's going to be difficult to get a conviction in the case. I mean, it's clearly not a premeditated case, but it's clearly a case where they knew that the conduct that they were imposing and the violence they were imposing on Mr. Nichols would cause death and could cause death. And then they left him unattended, slumped on the ground after they had drug him over to sit up against a police car without any aid. And so I just think it's a matter of time before these officers see themselves, former officers see themselves sitting in the penitentiary for a lengthy sentence. It's almost the place where we can't speak about it because it's so disgusting to watch it and uncalled for and unnecessary. It also cast a terrible shadow over the good police officers out there who are trying to do their job. And so I think the conduct not only had the awful consequences against Mr. Nichols and his family, but it's had terrible repercussions that I'm sure will ring throughout police departments across the country. We used to have under the Department of Justice, we really were very active about going in and having consent decrees and monitoring in police departments when these issues would come up. But you have to remember plans and memorandums and consent decrees. It's not a one and done time. It's not a one and done thing. There has to be ongoing efforts to make sure that officers are trained, that we recruit the best people, that we support the people in the field, that we monitor them psychologically, that we do things to make sure that they know how to combat these stressful times and also know how to push back and control these outbursts of anger. And I do think it was a hyped up situation, but I also think that it's just a lack of conscience in treating somebody less than human. And that speaks probably to a bigger problem and something that a piece of paper doesn't fix, a community meeting doesn't fix, but it's going to take the entire community, from community leaders who like to speak about the tragedy of it and the problems with the police department, to also the people who speak about the need for more policing because of spikes in crime in cities like Memphis, where they've had an exorbitant number of murders over the last couple of years. We've got to address all of that in a way that is actually meaningful, as opposed to just giving lip service about it when we have circumstances like this come up.
And Michael, I quickly wanted to get your perspective on one statement that we got from former Memphis police officer Desmond Mills' attorney, who says that his client did not cross the lines that others crossed during their confrontation with Nichols. What do you make of that defense?
If he was one of the five and he didn't pull the guys off while they were beating the man, he crossed the line. I mean, he may not have had the baton in his hand, but if he didn't push his fellow officer out of the way, if he didn't grab him and subdue him, if he didn't try to break up the victimization of Mr. Nichols, then he crossed the line. They take an oath to protect and serve. They didn't protect him. And there's nothing that I've seen, and nothing, no reporting that has been public, and it's been a fairly transparent case that indicates that there was anything that Mr. Nichols did that might have resulted in even an aggressive traffic stop or an aggressive arrest. And so, I don't know which officer he was in the video. I will say that candidly, but if he is one of the five and he didn't stop the attack, then he's just as much a part of it.
Makes sense. Cheryl, before we go, where do we go from here? I know President Biden has been pushing to renew efforts for the George Floyd Policing Act to be renewed in Congress, which would have banned, among many other things, chokeholds and carotid holds, and more funding for police training. Where do we even start?
Well, I don't say no to anything, and that sounds real sexy, but that's not going to do anything on the local level. And so where we need to start specifically with this department is taking a look at this special unit that they have. And these 18,000 police departments across the U.S. need to do something similar, because this is not unique to Memphis, where you have hot dogs, elephant hunters, I like to call, on these specialized units who are out there creating havoc. And when you have an officer who has a demonstrated ill temperament, inability to do the police work, unable to relate to the community that they serve, you need to get them off the department and or tie them to the desk if you can't fire them, because that's the lie police chiefs want us to believe.
Michael Moore and Cheryl Dorsey, really appreciate this conversation. Thank you very much.
Pleasure to be with all of
you.
Thanks.
All right, just ahead, a new study looking at the patterns of people who commit mass violence. What do most of the attackers have in common? We'll tell you ahead.